In 1996, 35 Australians were killed and 29 more were injured in what became the deadliest mass shooting in Australian history. And within just weeks, Australia's right to own firearms, even for self-defense, was gone, permanently. The media reported that a 28-year-old man named Martin Bryant entered the Broad Arrow Cafe at Port Arthur with a semi-automatic rifle, shot dozens of people, and later went on to kill more at nearby locations. Within hours, the national narrative was set. He acted alone, and Australia needed to be disarmed to prevent it from ever happening again. But is this what really happened? Since that day, hundreds of pieces of information, eyewitness reports, and unanswered legal questions have surfaced, and many of them don't match the official story. In this video, we'll walk through it all, from the political groundwork laid before the massacre, eyewitness reports, and the sealed evidence files that still remain hidden today. Quick disclaimer, this video does not claim to know exactly what happened at Port Arthur. It presents public records and eyewitness accounts to explore inconsistencies, not to make accusations. We encourage critical thinking and fact-checking. To support us, consider becoming a YouTube channel member or a Patreon, link in the description below. Nearly a decade before the massacre unfolded, in 1987, New South Wales Premier Barry Unsworth was quoted saying, quote, "It will take a massacre in Tasmania before we get gun law reform in Australia," end quote. That comment, made 9 years before Port Arthur, has plagued this story ever since. Many consider it just an unfortunate coincidence, but others can't help wonder, why Tasmania, and why did everything fall into place so swiftly after the massacre? Conveniently, just before the massacre, then Prime Minister John Howard spoke out on his views on gun control, saying, "Firearms should only be held by the military, the police, and the government." So when the event occurred, the policy groundwork appeared to already be in place, and within weeks, the strictest and most dramatic gun law reform in the world had begun. The man accused was Martin Bryant, a 28-year-old from Tasmania with a recorded IQ of around 66. That's about the cognitive ability of a year 3 student, and for context, to enter the military you need at least an IQ of 80. The media described him as a loner who simply snapped and executed dozens of people with chilling precision, but the confusing part was he was completely untrained, slow-speaking, and easily confused. And the shooting itself at the cafe specifically had 20 people killed and 12 more injured in just over 1 minute. And it has been called by experts a level of marksmanship and tactical speed with consistent military training, not the abilities of someone with a mental disability. Bryant initially pleaded not guilty, but after 5 months in solitary confinement and after allegedly being tortured and threatened with never seeing his mother again, he changed his plea to guilty, which meant there would be no trial, no cross-examination, and no presentation of the evidence in court as they had a confession. More than 200 people saw the event and survived in Port Arthur that day, but the number of people who identified Bryant as the shooter was just 2. Eyewitness Wendy Skerr, who was on site during the attack and knew Bryant, said the shooter had long, scraggly hair, but emphasized that it wasn't Martin Bryant. She also testified that all of the cafe managers were told not to come in on that very day, something that she had never seen happen before. Skerr also noted that the exit door, where 6 bodies were piled up, wouldn't open during the shooting. The media claimed it was a faulty lock, but she and others later discovered that it had been nailed shut prior to the event. Another survivor, Graham Collier, who was shot at point-blank range, stated definitively that that man was not Martin Bryant. A separate eyewitness, John Rook, described seeing a man about 5'5" with short reddish hair and a full beard firing from near the cafe entrance, not Bryant, who was taller with long blonde hair and no beard. Other eyewitnesses also reported hearing gunfire from multiple directions, as some claimed there were more than one shooter and that they moved far too quickly for one person to be responsible for the event. These testimonies were never tested in court because, again, no trial ever took place. According to reports, one of the guns Bryant allegedly used had previously been handed in to the Victorian police as part of the gun return program. Yet somehow that same weapon ended up in Martin Bryant's hands in Tasmania. How the gun got from the Victorian police to Martin Bryant in Port Arthur has never been publicly explained. Even stranger, a large mortuary refrigerated truck capable of handling 30 plus bodies was present on the scene, the specially made truck, as early as 2 months before the event. According to locals, they were confused why the truck had arrived, as there had never been need in the past for a morgue truck that big in Tasmania, and shortly after the event, it was sold off. Normally, a tragedy of this scale would trigger a public inquiry or royal commission, especially if the government intended to change national laws because of it. But in this case, nothing. There was no investigation into conflicting witness reports, no ballistics match presented publicly, and no transparency about how Bryant obtained weapons. The evidence was sealed and remains so to this day. In fact, all the key documents and court records were sealed for 75 years, meaning they won't be unsealed until 2071. The cafe where the attack happened, Broad Arrow Cafe, was also quickly demolished after the event, removing the crime scene forever. Right after the attack, Prime Minister Howard introduced the National Firearms Agreement, which resulted in mass confiscation and destruction of civilian firearms. Ownership of guns for self-defense was outlawed. New restrictions were introduced on magazine size, firearm type, and registration, and the Australian government spent hundreds of $millions on buybacks, and the shift was celebrated globally and nationally at the time as a model of good gun control. But to this day, many Australians still ask, did the government do this for public safety or for political convenience? The Port Arthur Massacre was real. People died, families were devastated. But when 35 people are killed, and the entire country's laws are changed based on it, yet there's no trial, no inquiry, and evidence remains sealed for most of our lifetime, you have every right to ask questions. We're not here to tell you what to think, just to present information that's rarely discussed so you can decide for yourself. But with so many inconsistencies, overlooked voices, and sealed records, this topic demands a closer look. If you believe in truth, accountability, and want more Aussies to know these details, like and share the video. Check out one of the videos on screen now and our merch, and consider becoming a YouTube channel member or Patreon, link in the description below. God bless Australia, and Christ is King.